In 2020, the World Economic Forum estimated that AI might destroy 85 million jobs by 2025. A 2022 study by the US Government Accountability Office found that between 9 and 47% of jobs could be automated, particularly jobs requiring lower education levels or more routine tasks. Not surprisingly, workers, particularly low-skilled ones, perceive automation, specifically robots, as threatening to their jobs. Fear and resentment towards job-stealing machines are not new. Throughout the series of overlapping industrial revolutions in history, many jobs were indeed diminished or replaced by machines. Yet other jobs were created over time. They're the words from part 3 of our guest's brilliant book, The Magic Conveyor Belt. Welcome back, Professor Yossi Sheffi.
Hi, Aidan. Nice to see you again.
Great to be with you again, sir. And I learned so much from this book. I'd love to, before we get into part 3 and 4, which paint both sides of the argument here, the dystopian and the utopian view, which I feel you're certainly an optimist.
At the end of the day, I'm an optimist. Yeah.
I thought we'd give a quick overview, as you do in the book, of the industrial revolutions and this resistance to automation that's always been there.
Yes. So clearly, the first industrial revolution moved from manual production to machine. Started in the UK actually between 1750 and 1850. The looms were mechanized. The second industrial revolution, 1850 to 1950, the assembly line, the telegraph, electricity. The third industrial revolution was the digital revolution, when we had PCs and phones and Wi-Fi and fiber optics and containers, very important for supply chain management. And the fourth industrial revolution is what really we're living through today. It's we're living through the widespread use of connected devices, IoT, AI, conversational computing. There's also something called the fifth industrial revolution, which is the EU is running. It's more aspirational. It's not really happening yet. They hope that the fourth industrial revolution will turn into something that that advanced tech will work with people and will not just displace people and solve problems that people cannot solve otherwise, and basically amplify human creativity. The important point in this, that there were always resistance, in many cases violent resistance. The Luddites in the first industrial revolution, the Hunger March, the second industrial revolution, there were always problems. Yet and by the way, a few jobs were lost. Some jobs were really lost, in the sense that we don't have any more elevator operators. We don't have any more telephone exchange operators. We don't have, computers used to be a job description. I mean, that's a lot of women used to sit in big offices and do financial statement and do accounting. Telegram messengers, cockpit crew used to have 5 people in the for airline. Now it has only 2, and you really need no one, but we still have 2. So some jobs were lost. If you look, for example, we can give more example later, but the most important thing is that many more jobs were created. In fact, Oxford research 10 years ago said that, close to 37% or 40% of the job in the US will disappear by 2023. Yet, but 2023 is here, and we are living with 3.5% unemployment, which is the lowest ever. So it's as Niels Bohr once said, it's difficult to predict, especially the future. So it's hard. It's a moving technology. It's not yet stable. Some things are working very well with AI. Right now, that's what people are most worried about. We can talk about AI versus generative AI, but throughout history. And the reason I talk in the book about history is because I don't know what the future is. And when people try to forecast, they look at history. So at every big change, there was, people thought that, people thought that when the slide rule came, the end of mathematics. No, but people lost the ability to estimate. Actually, we were not very good at estimate. So there are things that there are some changes, but by and large, many more jobs were. The population grew, and we still live with low unemployment. So many more jobs, and we can give more example of job creation.
Well, come back to that, because I think you finish with that and the desired skills that are most coveted today as well towards the end of the book. But I thought we'd maybe pull on a couple of things that are really relevant to resistance to change. And this goes for both new technologies, but also innovation itself. You talked about, for example, eBay and PayPal, these kind of companies, that these two-sided platform companies, that one of the reasons they actually snuck into society and had proliferation was because they came in before the 2008 crash. So there wasn't the hyper regulation, for example. And in the book, it's a brilliant read about this, where you talk about the resistance using regulation to resist changes as well. And this is just like plugging the dam, like the little Dutch boy with the finger in the dam, because the change will eventually come.
Yeah. What I'm saying this, one of the points I mentioned in the book is that some people are freaking out with especially regenerative AI, and I said, chill, basically. It happens so much slower than people think. I give the example that a job that disappeared, the telephone exchange operators. 1892, AT&T invented the automated exchange. In 1950, there were still 350,000 telephone exchange operators in the United States. Only in 1980, 9 decades later, really the jobs went away. It takes time. It does take time. And it takes time for a variety of reasons. One of them is regulation. Even now, by the way, EU, China, US are all trying to regulate the development of generative AI. And it will slow the development. There are unions who are, in many cases, dead set against any automation, and people who doubt it should compare the Los Angeles and Long Beach ports to really advanced ports like Dubai and Rotterdam and Singapore. The level of automation and the productivity that goes with it is just unmet. But there's another thing that people don't think about, and this is the public acceptance of automation. And the classic example I gave is today's airliner can go gate to gate across the Atlantic. You don't need a pilot. Not too many of your readers, of your listener, will go on a metal box that flies at 35,000 feet over the Atlantic with no pilot. But also, not too many will go on a highway when the robotic trucks with no driver going 100 kilometers an hour right next to them. People will have, and I gave some examples of resistance that actually bore fruit in the United States. Long combination vehicles, a truck that has 2 or 3 trailers, allowed only in very limited cases because of the railroad, which has economic interest to make sure that it will die, fought against it. Very effective fight. So all this, there are lots of interests that are against change. As you say, at the end, technology always wins. It always comes in why? Because the company who uses technology, or the person who uses technology, at the end becomes so much more productive and so much more efficient that they win, and the others have to join no matter what. So by and large, this happened, but it takes. That in the US, example that came to my head, you can, in most places, you go to fill your car with gas, you fill it yourself. There are 2 states in the United States when it's illegal. It's illegal to protect the workers. So you go to Seattle, you cannot fill gas. It's illegal in Seattle. In 1584, William Lee invented the mechanical knitting machine. He came to, it's called stocking frame. he came to Queen Elizabeth I, so it was a while ago, and gave her a pair of stockings that he made with a machine. She almost beheaded him. He wanted the license to do it. She said, absolutely not, because she was worried about jobs that will disappear. You can think about the first, regulating technology. Now, at the end, of course, mechanization happened and this takes place, but it takes a long time. If I may, I'll jump to one point I make in the end of the book, that companies should right now, and workers should not think about upgrading skills and getting ready for what's coming. In fact, I just wrote, it's not in the book, but I just wrote, you may not know it, but there are a lot of strikes now in the US. The auto worker strike, the Hollywood strike, UPS just got a good contract. So lots of labor. And I wrote the piece, it's on Harvard Business Review, actually, coming up. It's online probably already, saying that all these workers are negotiating the wrong thing because they're all focused on today, on getting X more. Said, what you should, right now you have some leverage because people still need the workers. You should negotiate on how you work in the advanced AI world. What you should demand, okay, salary, fine. But you also should demand that the company will absolutely invest in upgrading your skills, not just giving you a few more cents per hour. That's short-term thinking. People have to get ready for this, but there's time, and unions should think about that's what they should be negotiating. Make sure that the company invests in you. That's what's important.
Your point there, I love the story about the trailers and how the US Congress actually backed the railways, and actually there was $1 million campaign, multi-million-dollar campaign in the newspapers, on the TV. There was TV ads that you describe in the book. I'm going to write about it and actually just bring attention to that because it's so important what you said there. And what I thought was crazy was, to your point here, instead of actually spending those multi-million dollars to defend, what if they actually used it as an offense and went, actually, we're going to invest this money in innovation and change and actually...
Yes,
that's the point.
Rather than invest the money in stopping technological progress and efficiency and productivity, this is so backwards thinking. But by the way, the rules still apply today.
Yeah.
The campaign was a fear campaign. Basically, you are so afraid. And the data did not support it. There were actually less accidents with the long combination vehicles because drivers are a lot more careful. It's harder to drive. Didn't matter. The fear, because they didn't go to Congress, they went to the public, and the public wrote the congressman. Didn't work. So it's pathetic that this thing takes place, but they do.
There's a guy, a friend of the show, a guy called David Kerrigan. He wrote a book called about driverless cars. Essentially, he was telling me that while it's hard to find if this is a fact or not, but when first cars started proliferating in the marketplace, the people were paid to, actually, poor people were given money and said, we'll look after your family if you jump in front of the car, in order to actually to show that the cars are unsafe. And I was like, kind of going, this is just a modern day version of that.
I'll tell you a fact that you can find out. In Chicago, when the first car came, in front of the car there used to be a man with a flag going to alert the public that there's a car coming. It's so now we have the driver and a flagman, not
Yeah, but it's just like, I think the point here that I thought was really important is, regulation is a short-term game. Use it if it's to buy yourself time. And then secondly, that why not reinvest that energy and that finance into yourself as a person, like you said, reinvest in your skill.
Sometimes regulation makes sense when the risks are unknown. For example, there are a lot of people calling to some stop or regulation of generative AI, because nobody knows where it's going. Even the people who develop it don't understand exactly how it works. So, okay, I can understand there may be risk. And then it's interesting, the EU, the China, the US are all thinking about how to regulate. It's not easy. But the interesting thing in this case, And why I'm actually, one of the reasons that I'm optimistic is I'm old enough to have been there in the early days of the internet. And we were all very excited. Here comes something that could connect all humanity and do things together and all the information and all this. Nobody told us about identity theft. Nobody told us about terrorists, talking to each other and plotting something over the internet. Nobody told us about cybersecurity problems, stealing our data. Now, in the very early days of AI, the developers are putting guardrails around it. The developers are talking to the government about regulating. They all understand that we don't want to make the same mistakes again. So that's one reason to be optimistic about it.
I'm going to move on because what I love what you do is you give us a language and a framework, and I just want to say how comprehensive this book is. It's not just about supply chains. If you are anybody in the world and we're facing this period of absolute VUCA, this book is so useful for the language and the frameworks and just the examples that Yossi gives. You say here in a section called the anatomy of logistics, jobs replaced by machines. So this is really important. There's two basic functions you tell us of logistics: warehousing and transportation. Both areas are experiencing substantial automation efforts that may lead to job losses and job changes for logistics professionals. Maybe you'll share your observations about these two functions, because they're actually what's being changed. And as you say, it's creative destruction. They'll be broken down and they'll be recalibrated, but there's a place for the human in the future.
Exactly. So think about, let's start with warehousing. Think about Amazon. Amazon is in 2017, we started really putting robots everywhere in all the warehouse, and very sophisticated. The robots are taking a whole aisle and bringing it to the person and saving a lot of workers. At the same time, they hire over 1 million workers, and since then, because they do a lot more and things they've never done before. And now they're doing it with the fresh food, and all it works. There's of course some, maybe okay, we'll go to this later. Trucks, we're talking about autonomous trucking, basically. And the question is, how should the workforce be prepared for it? Well, autonomous truck, think about how drones today work, how the US military has somebody sitting in some bunker in Nevada and throwing a missile on some terrorists in Africa. Okay, think about a fleet of autonomous trucks that will be, every 2, 3, or 4 of them will be controlled by one person sitting in air-conditioned room and and having coffee. The trucks, by the way, there are lots more. So first of all, there will be lots more trucking, so lots more jobs. Second, the trucking will go only what's called exit to exit. They cannot go in the city. Cities are not built for trucks to get into. So truck will go to some truck stop. There'll be people working there who will service the truck, oil it, fuel it, whatever. Then probably an electric tractor will come, pick the truck and going to the last 5-10 miles into the city and bring it go. So there'll be a lot of new jobs there. So in all of this, and this just doesn't even talk about new industries. And I have to give one example about what I mean by we don't know how far it will go. So one of the examples of changing jobs was when Ford created the assembly line. So before that, there were a group of people making a group of artisans, group working on a car. They knew all the jobs involved. Changed completely to the assembly line, and workers stood next to the assembly line, did the same job. They do the same screw over and over again, and the cars move around. By the way, the same idea that Amazon had 100 years later: move the work to the workers rather than the worker to the work. But anyway, in the number of workers in Ford went from about several thousand to 150,000 in the heydays of the Model T. So people think, okay, more jobs were created. No, many more jobs were created because cars became a lot less expensive. Because of this, people started, the United States built freeways, hotel, motel, restaurant, the whole hospitality industry, including millions of jobs, exploded. Now, Ford, when he did the assembly, just tried to be more efficient in building cars. He didn't try to build a whole new industry, but it happened. It didn't happen on day one, but over time, it happened. So that's what I mean. It's hard to imagine all the new industry and new jobs that will be created as we go forward with any new technology. So I don't know which new industry will be created, but you can see some of it already. But I'm sure there will be a lot of new jobs and new industry. But people have to be more digitally savvy, that's for sure, and have to be more able to change and be agreeable to change, because jobs will change. They're not going to so much disappear as change.
The way you build towards that is really helpful. Like, for example, you go, okay, here's how jobs change. Like, so you say, okay, they're removed, but in the short term, they're removed. For example, you said there, the internet. Nobody thought about the internet years later being cybercrime, fighting cybercrime being a massive job, yeah, like security on the internet. Like, nobody could have perceived that because we couldn't see that far ahead. But you talk about the ways this happens, and this was really useful. So the labels here, for example, de-skilling, scaling, these kind of labels become really useful to be able to get your head around and kind of go, okay, what am I talking about here? So maybe you take us through each of these separately. So the first is de-skilling.
So I go to 3 stages you can think about of until job disappears, but just talk about the disappearance, not about the new job creation. So the first one is de-skilling, reducing the need for expertise, which means in some sense democratizing jobs, but they're also allowing lower pay workers to do the job. I'll give examples in a minute. The second one is scaling. Technology that helps operators do their job and do their job better, so maybe require less operators. And finally, it's elimination. It's total automation, impossible in some cases. So some examples of this scaling. There are many examples. I'll give one. The example that I love are the black taxis in London. Of course, to be a driver, you need to go to 4 years studying and do the exam to get what's called the knowledge. Every street and every point of interest in London, which is an archaic knowledge, and it was considered the toughest exam in the world, the final exam to get it, and it started from horse and carriage, and then moved to the taxi, but then came GPS and Uber and maps, the digital maps, and suddenly everybody could do it. And you didn't know. So this is an example of de-skilling. Actually, there are more people ferrying people around London. The number of black taxi went from about 20,000 to about half, between 8 and 10,000. But there are tens of thousands Uber drivers, and all over the place. Actually, London is one of the places the easiest and fastest to get an Uber. So that's example of de-skilling. Of course, the ultimate de-skilling is when you let the consumer do the job. So whether you self-checkout in supermarket or ATMs, when you don't need the automatic teller machine, when you don't need the teller automated. And even today, building a website, there are tools to build it. You just build it yourself. Now, scaling is when do more with less. So you have warehouse workers who will do all kind of tools and to do more, all kind of machinery. But the best example is agriculture. Started from working with hand, working with horses, or then oxes, then tractors, then combines, and now it's automated. There are automated combines that run on the street. You don't need work. Agriculture in 1900, 41% of the U.S. workforce was engaged in agriculture. In 2000, it was 1.9%. So, and it's not like, some jobs were eliminated, other jobs were changed, but you don't see it. The jobs that were changed are jobs that people who are building these new combines, people who are maintaining these new combines, people who are running the drones who run over the field to find out what's going on. People develop new seeds that can deal with automating. There are sowing machines that check exactly the characteristics of every piece of soil in order to put how much seed to put. The seed had to be redesigned in order to be able to do. So a lot of jobs to get created. Some jobs were lost. The brick-making jobs, working in the hot sun in Texas, were lost. I mean, or at least a lot less of them. So there are all of these examples, and some jobs were eliminated, whether it's elevator operator, exchange operator, telegram messengers, things like some jobs disappear, but mostly, nah.
Brilliant. And I pulled out a key point. I just wanted to consolidate the point here, and I thought this was such a beautifully written passage as well. So bear with me for a sec as I read this. It says, what some of the debate about automation possibly misses is that technology will lead to currently unknown developments, some beneficial and some not. For instance, as some examples in this section of the book demonstrate, technological development has resulted in many more jobs than it eliminated. Frequently, the newly created jobs were not even in the industry where jobs were eliminated or substantially changed. They were in new industries that did not exist before. This, you say, reflects the central problem in any discussion of technology and jobs. The lost jobs are known and tangible. One can imagine and sympathize with the people who lose their jobs. The new future jobs do not help those people because the jobs do not exist yet. It is not even known what these jobs are going to be. That absolutely nails the point. And I thought that was just a beautifully written passage, because I fall into that category sometimes, Yossi, as well, where I think it's like a little bit of a game of musical chairs, where we're running out of chairs. The more we automate, the less jobs there are going to be. But I think I'm just falling victim to that passage as well. So bravo to you.
Everybody is falling victim. I talk to journalists all the time, and talk to Bloomberg, talk to all kind of journalists, and they're all a little petrified. They say that one of them told me, "I'm on a ledge, Professor Sheffi. I'm on a ledge. I'm ready to jump." I said, "Don't jump yet." I mean, that's because they all think, "Oh, AI is coming. It will be my image with AI." First of all, who would love? You are good-looking women. Nobody's gonna fall in love with a robot. But at least not yet.
We're working on it. We're working.
It will take a while. But so what should they do? What should I do? I said, look, you are in an industry. This industry will change. There will be, for example, you are writing a script, talking to somebody on TV who was writing script. Said guess what? 10 years from now, you will not be writing script. ChatGPT 15 or whatever it will be by then will write the script. What you need to develop is the ability to critically read the script, to find out what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, what your audience would like, what your audience would look like. You need to develop this, as well as the ability to use ChatGPT to develop a script, as well as, if you want, tangential jobs, not in front of the camera, behind the camera, do the programming. There's a lot of jobs there that will still be there, and you understand them, get to know them more, get how they will change. In short, it's on you. I mean, it's on you, because if your company would not invest, you need to invest in this, and you need to think about where this may be going.
You've teed us up beautifully for the next section, which is robots as co-workers, not competition. So this is the idea of collaborative robots or cobots. But I wanted to share this with you. There's an artist I love, a musical artist, a guy called Olafur Arnalds. He's a pianist. And I've talked about him before in the show because he just absolutely nails this point that you're making here. And I'd love you to give some examples. What he does, Yossi, is he has a piano. I've seen him play live in the concert hall here in Dublin. I'd love to have you over here someday and bring you there. It's beautiful. But he has 3 pianos. 2 of them are automated. And what he did was he got a friend who was a computer programmer to hack an old MIDI synth. So this thing that what it was developed for was to be able to play with a piano, be able to play any kind of synthesized sound. So this device, and he hacked it, and he used it to basically, when he plays the piano, he said, I'm a classical pianist, and if I'm taught that I play an A and then I play a G minor or B, whatever, I don't play the piano. So whatever that sequence you're taught as a human, he says, I've programmed the pianos, the two of them, to bring me in a different direction that I would never have thought about before. And he said, it's what it does next. It's because I play a key and then it plays this beautiful sequence that it makes me think, I never thought about that before. And then I'll play in a different way. And I said, that's exactly what the point Yossi's making here. It's where it brings you, but you have to be open to that.
Exactly. And by the way, this is the aspirational side of the fifth industrial revolution that the EU is talking about, is increasing creativity, actually. And this is a perfect example. Now, we talk about what are the key qualities of humanity that it's hard to imagine in any short, medium run that computers can. So first of all, humans live in the physical and social world. They can understand context. The machine can understand what's in front of it and do, if this change, they can do this and that, but understand context, that now what they do is irrelevant. For example, because we're now going towards a recession, and we have the machine that does automatic ordering, and now the whole demand is going to change. People are going to go to value rather than stuff. People have moral code. Machines don't. And you can try to program it, but it's always kludgy. People can adapt. People can coordinate. People can, if something happen, I in one of my previous book, talk about during the COVID, I wrote it called the new abnormal. I wrote about how I had many examples of companies collaborating with competitors. I mean, that's hard to, and based what? Based on trust, that people knew each other. They went back to business school together. They were in the military together. Two CEOs, they knew each other, and without lawyer, in the American context, to say without lawyer is heresy, but immediately, within days, thousands of workers and trucks were moving from one company to another. There was unbelievable cooperation between the people who developed the vaccine. I work with Moderna next. A lot of people cooperate. People have the creative drive, which actually can be enhanced. Hence your example with the parents. Absolute example. Because people live in many worlds and they can take from one world to another. And when you talk about the business, one cannot imagine negotiation and collaboration done automatically. If you have to get a supplier in China, you're going to fly there, negotiate like hell for 2 days, and then go to dinner and talk about your kids and talk about your spouses and become friends. And that's how business is done. My point is, supply chains are social networks, actually. The ultimate social network, because they happen between people. And then there's a question of risk tolerance, the machines. Risk tolerance is something that's not fixed, something that changes depending on the context. It's another example. All these things are things that humans still have, and they'll work with the machines and evaluate the merit and direct the machine to change when need, correct the machine failure, replace the machine. So, and since there'll be a lot more machines, there'll be a lot more work.
There was one thing you said that was really interesting, which was with the changing demographics of the planet. So, for example, places like Japan and China, where people are living much longer, everywhere people are living much longer, which creates this kind of gap in pensions. So pension funds gap, etc. So you kind of go, well, that's happening. But one of the things I found fascinating from this section, where I kind of tracked back and I went, well, if people are aging longer, they're also working longer, and that's by they want to as well. They want to have a purpose other than just living. And one of the things you said here, which was really fascinating, was if you think about automation, it actually, things like an exoskeleton can actually help somebody work longer if they're older.
Exactly. Not only this, because it is clear that it's the easiest job to replace are the more, physical jobs, because robots, that's what robots do. Exoskeleton help you. So the more jobs become, managing and coordinating, people who are older can do it as well. Now, that's again, people are fighting the wrong fight, especially in France. I mean, look, you're talking to a 75-year-old who is going to work until they'll take me out feet first. Because what I'm going to do, you know,
Which is, I can imagine you're fighting with your exoskeleton on, man.
yeah. Well, in my job, I can teach, I can, do research. So it's not a problem.
You look
But
great for 75, by the way. People who aren't watching this, Yossi, no way you look 75. You're doing something right.
well, the calendar doesn't lie, so I'm okay. I'm still having fun, still having. But I'm looking at people who retire, and the unfortunate thing, I feel they start declining after they retire, because one needs purpose. So there are few lucky people who have tied to some social causes and start really getting into this. That's great. But many people, are not doing it. And of course, if you are French, you think that retiring at age 62 is God-given right, even though the 62 age was when people lived until they were 55. So doing retiring at 62 was nothing. Now people are living into the 80s, 90s. In fact, we know a lot of people who live in a retirement community that we are kind of half members in. It's a big community, but it has about 30 people or over 100, and totally with it. A lot of faculty, tell jokes, and it's really amazing. I try to talk to them just for the fun of it. It's just or to make me feel good that maybe I'll reach it.
Yeah, I believe we will. And I think, this goes back to one of your points, is that when you have the money in the coffers, I mean, like, as an organization, that's the time to invest in the future, not to defend the past. And the same goes for you physically, like physically invest.
Yes. Oh God, yes. Yes. No, absolutely yes. Yes. This is the time. When I talk to workers, right now you have leverage. They still need you. Make sure that the next labor contracts say that they have to upgrade your skills. Must. It's part of the deal. Companies, now you have the asset, you have the capability, you have still the profitability. What are you waiting? You're waiting until some startup will obviate you? I mean, that's where you play defense and you lose. It's the time, but we all know it. We all know people who stay in the job for too long. CEOs, university president, what have you, politicians in the United States stay on the job for too long, because the classic is to live at the top, be able to live at the top. But it's difficult. I sold one of my companies to Ryder, and the CEO of Ryder, when we retired, the CEO of the part of the company that bought me, retired, and I asked him, Larry, what does it feel when you retire? Because you were, big cheese and all of this. He said, you know what's the worst thing? People stop laughing at my jokes.
My wife never laughs at my jokes, so I'm okay.
No, people get used to people around them. People laugh at all their jokes. People do whatever they do. It's hard to live, but living on top, it is such a skill, the ability to know when it's time.
It's always time before you think it's time, I think, and I
Exactly. Exactly.
maybe we'll finish on, because we're on a positive note, and I think what you said there is just, if there's one thing people take out of this show, it's that it's realize to invest in yourself. Like, even to the point of, you see people, I've been that person, so busy thinking you're so important in your job, and then you
Yeah.
lose your network, all those things, and then you're finished and like, what do I do now?
What happened? What? Look, I know. I started having this when I started realizing that my students know certain things that I don't. So I had to take a course in Python programming. I mean, just to get myself at my age, I cannot allow myself to become irrelevant. And if I don't speak the language, I don't need to be a computer scientist suddenly, but I need to understand. I need to understand what's involved. So I'm doing research into AI because my students are all using, machine learning, generative AI. I need to be into it because otherwise I'm irrelevant here.
And that's a beautiful way to say that. The last part, and I'm skipping loads here, by the way, I have to say 3 and 4 are full of great research, great studies. All the references are there at the end of the book as well. It's a great resource for the latest studies and drawing the points out of those studies as well. But you mentioned the Future of Jobs report that came out in 2020 by the WEF, the World Economic Forum. It kind of gives 10 jobs that are the sharpest decline, and then the 10 jobs they expect to be the sharpest increase in demand. And maybe we won't go through all the 10 points, but from your overview, from your your finger on the pulse of society and from the job market, what are you seeing are the most desired jobs, the types of people, the types of skills that they'll need in the future?
Okay. So first of all, since I'm a university professor, all my friends come to me when the kids have to go to college. And my uniform advice, almost to everybody, unless you are, win the, Westinghouse Mathematics Prize and we're going to be starred at MIT. My advice is don't go to college because no AI will replace a plumber, an electrician, a builder. So go to a trade school. That's absolutely my advice. Don't go to college to study, ancient history, because you come out of it and ChatGPT will write the paper better than you can, and will deal with more resources than you can do in your lifetime, and will do it in 1.2 seconds rather than 4 years of college. So I'm trying, but of course there's the go against the grain because all my friends want to be. My kid goes to X university. My kid goes. It's a parent pride. So they send the kids to school. The kids, and in the United States, it's outrageously expensive. So people come out with debts that are anyway. It's a flawed system. So you ask what I said. First of all, think about jobs that you do with your hands and all. And the reason is generative AI, because for the first time, jobs that are being threatened are jobs that require cognitive ability. The first time. To be sure, I also, some of the jobs that, there's a problem here because when I talk to many companies, they say, for example, junior lawyer, junior programmers, these are in danger. Clearly, there's not going to be a robot that's going to argue in front of the US Supreme Court. There's not going to be, a complicated murder case is not going to be handled by a robot. But the simple job, the simple programming job. And I tell these people, do you realize even what you're saying? How you get to be an experienced lawyer if you don't hire, if you leave all the simple jobs to the machine? You'll never have. So within 10 years, you will never have anybody because you have to grow them. You have to be. This is the challenge, to make sure that people and machine can work together. So the lawyer will actually understand the work, do the work, be able to judge the generative AI, just as important, and be able to argue cases, even when they're junior, because otherwise you don't trade them. I don't think in the United States, clear the number of lawyers is not going to go down. It's only going up because we sue for everything. But in the number, I don't think the number of computer programmers will go down because there's more and more technology, more and more digital technology that's required. So there'll be some jobs that be open. We see jobs like bank tellers. Okay. Even though, again, people forget that it's dealing with people. Like my wife hates to go. She will not go to supermarkets that are totally automated because she likes to go to Whole Food supermarkets, when you can automate the because the clerks are hi, and how are you doing? And they talk for half an hour, and she buys something. I mean, there's a social dimension to all these interactions, which I don't think. So there'll be some bifurcation. There'll be retail outlets that will be totally automated, retail outlets that will say, no, we are a service operator. We like the human touch. And then there'll be a combination. You think about when you call your any company customer service, you talk to a chatbot, basically. It's AI, just generative AI for the most part today. It used to be press 1 to go here, press 2 to go here, press 3 to go here. No, now you're talking, and the machine is talking back to you. However, at one point, either you get frustrated and start screaming, at least in the US, you scream agent, 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 or the machine gets frustrated and an agent comes. So this is one of the combination. When the machine does a job but monitored by a human, when the machine runs through its ability, a human comes up. It's a special case that you need. So there are many modes of operation. And by the way, this mode of monitoring and getting involved when something happens is a very important future mode of operation. You need to understand what the machine can and cannot do. That's the upgrading. And you need to be able to do the job and solve real complex problem or problem the machine cannot solve. But I see a lot of jobs in the future. Different jobs, but a lot of jobs.
I'm going to pull one last little excerpt, a little sentence here that I think just encapsulates it, and it'd be a lovely way to finish this series. And I want to thank you for your time and investment in this. I know your time is extremely valuable. And I'm going to come to you maybe for your final thoughts or your final message to our audience, because this book is about much more than a conveyor belt. It's about much more than supply chains. It's about the supply chain of humanity, the supply chain of spaceship Earth. And I really felt that. And I think this, for me, this little excerpt encapsulated. You say here, while computers may be masters of the digital world, the fact that humans live in the physical and social world gives them a superiority in several areas applicable to supply chain operations and management. Whereas a piece of software dutifully executes its algorithms, without exception, people can spot an exceptional change or a problem that requires implementing new processes. Beautiful, beautifully written, man. That nails it. So what's your final message, Yossi, before we wrap up for our audience?
Final message is that change is coming. It's going to take more time than people think. Both people and the writers of the codes have to adjust to the environment that people and machines will be working together. The codes have to be designed differently to make sure that it can take continuous input from the human. Humans have to change their mindset and be able to interact with the machine all the time. But I think I can see only good future. So I'm as I say, I'm an optimist. I see so many possible jobs coming and interesting jobs.
Professor Yossi Sheffi, author of The Magic Conveyor Belt, a magnificent book that goes much deeper than supply chains, as we talked about. I want to thank you sincerely for your time and investment in this show. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, and appreciate the opportunity.